All right, so this video is going to be about the prosecutorial strategies against Dr. Michelle Dow and the importance of spending, a significant amount of financial resources to build, the case, and no such a case has ever been more important to prosecute and to. I mean, the acquittal is just not an option. There cannot be any kind of acquittals here. This is extremely, extremely important. So, to effectively prosecute Dr. Michel Duh, the case must be built on irrefutable evidence, strategic legal arguments, and a compelling narrative that exposes her actions. Below are key prosecutorial strategies to maximize efficacy and bringing her to justice. Where does she belong in the prison? Of course, for a period of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for 25 years. Life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for 25 years. And don't get me wrong. I mean, you'd imagine that somebody that kills that many people, right, will the case will prosecute itself, but it certainly does not, and we cannot leave any kind of stone unturned, especially in such a ridiculously egregious, uh, you know, the facts of the case are just so egregious that we cannot leave any kind of stone unturned. Establishing lack of informed consent. Medical fraud. So the key arguments here were that patients were not given full, truthful information about the nature of the birth control pills, drugs, they were prescribed. Informed consent requires patients to be aware of all mechanisms of action, including the potential abortifacient effects. So the problem, of course, as we talked in the channel, is that these birth control pills do not suppress ovulation and do not prevent the pregnancy. The baby is alive for a week or so, or more, and then the baby, a small boy or a small girl will die. So the evidence, right? Patient testimony stating they were not informed that the drugs could cause post-conception embryonic death. Medical literature and pharmaceutical inserts showing implantation prevention as a mechanism of action. Right, the mechanism of action is the implantation will not be successful for the small boy or a small girl. Right, so that's the only reason that the pharmaceutical company would admit that that is what would implant. Of course, the baby is a baby, and the baby will implant. That's the whole idea of the altered endometrium there, because I mean, if you have an altered endometrium, the small boy or the small girl will not be able to implant. That's the whole point of it, right? Huh? Um, Expert testimony from embryologists confirming that life begins at conception. So there's a huge, some sort of a disconnect from reality there. So, but embryologists, we're not talking about a religiously charged argument. This is based in medical science. So the legal precedents, if similar cases of medical fraud have been prosecuted, they can serve as supporting case law. Right? So, and I know that we're talking about any kind of domestic court and all this stuff. There's going to be some serious challenges due to the case law of these emotionally charged arguments and everything like that. But if these learned judges would put aside their political bias, and they would serve the interests of justice, then we would certainly see a conviction here. So pursuing criminal negligence or gross medical misconduct. So the key argument here would be that Dr. Dow either deliberately misled patients or failed to properly educate herself on the effects of the drug she was prescribing, constituting gross negligence. Um, imagine how grossly negligent that would be. She doesn't even know what the prescription that she's giving to these young underage girls. She doesn't even know the drugs. So she's prescribing something that she doesn't know what it is, and that is of course not what's going on here. So what is the likelihood of this happening is, like I said, 0.1%. And with this one here, she deliberately misled patients. It's either one or the other, and so obviously she deliberately misled patients, and so the evidence would be official medical guidelines and definitions contradicting her claims, internal communications, training materials, or medical board records that show what information she should have known, and testimonies from other medical professionals proving that Dow acted outside accepted medical standards. So the possible charges could be criminal and negligence causing harm, if emotional and physiological, psychological harm can be demonstrated in violation of medical ethics, leading to license revocation. Right? So this license is absolutely not. It just, some. This is, the license should be revoked, permanently, forever. I mean, this is certainly. We there are no checks and balances. Let's just I'll just put it to you very reasonably. The checks and balances that we have for these doctors are just non-existent. If we can allow some sort of this bad of, I mean, I cannot think of anything more egregious. I cannot. Is there anything that I can, formulate into my, I mean, I'm not some mass murderer, so maybe, you just, kill every human in existence. Is that what she wants to do? Right? She killed so many people. It's really, really, um, really egregious. I mean, exposing financial conflicts of interest. Let's continue. Key argument is that if Dr. Dow receives financial incentives for promoting or prescribing certain birth control drugs without disclosing risks, this constitutes a conflict of interest and potential fraud. Should the evidence would be financial records, payments, and or bonuses from pharmaceutical companies, so that her private bank account. I don't think we need to have that much papers. I mean, the bank account is so full, that we don't need to print out that many zeros. I mean, it would be like too many pieces of paper that would be printed with all these zeros. What I'm saying is that the bank account is bursting at the seams. So a discovery would show that financial records. Um, would certainly find evidence that pharmaceutical companies were kickbacking and all that stuff too. Of course, they're her main foot soldier, right? The main foot soldier, the pharmaceuticals' main number one woman in the field, right? She's at the forefront of women's rights and all that. What a disgusting story! I can't even imagine this kind of thing. Oh man. So lots and lots of money here, huge money, huge money. You think that big brick mansion is something, right? She can go there and pay for, dozens and dozens of brick mansions cash. No, there's no bank loan or anything. She could just pay for it cash. This kind of money really, I guess, it corrupts that much. I certainly wouldn't be corrupted that by killing that many babies. If I were to kill one child, I would be crying and trying to, warn the population to never do this again. And I would, I couldn't even live with myself. I cannot imagine killing one child, and she killed so many. It's really, really disgusting. This is a story beyond anything that I could ever imagine. All right, so pattern of overprescription or preference for specific drugs linked to pharmaceutical incentives, expert testimony from industry watchdogs, and or unethical financial practices in medicine. Can we even call it medicine? Legal precedent. Cases of doctors facing prosecution for kickbacks from pharmaceutical companies can serve as precedent. We for some reason we think that these people with PhDs, can they are untouchable, or we don't need any kind of oversight or whatever. For some reason, as soon as you've got a PhD and you're in a government position, nobody, there's no oversight. You do whatever you want, and it's just, this is going to stop. I mean, obviously, the prosecution here is extremely important. Challenging the redefinition of conception in court. So the key argument is that modern medical definitions have been altered to fit political agendas, and this redefinition has been weaponized to deceive patients. If courts acknowledge that conception is fertilization, then preventing implantation after fertilization is by definition abortion. It's a crime. It's murder, right? It's the death of a fully viable, a healthy baby girl or baby boy, right? So the evidence, of course, historical medical textbooks and definitions of conception before political changes, testimony from embryologists and biologists supporting the scientific definition of conception, cross-examination of medical professionals who must admit that life begins at fertilization, at conception. Yeah. So the legal strategy, of course, would be so to use this as the foundation for proving fraud in how birth control is marketed and prescribed. to minors, to minor children, to young ladies who do not have the brain, the full, prefrontal cortex development yet, and all that stuff. We talked about that in my other video. So leveraging civil suits to pressure a criminal case. The key arguments are if criminal prosecution is difficult due to political barriers, civil lawsuits from affected patients can create legal and financial pressure on Dr. Dow and her affiliates. The strategy would be to organize a class action lawsuit for medical fraud and emotional distress, seek damages from pharmaceutical companies that misled patients through her, including the father, right? The father of, for example, the mother would take these, birth control pills, and of course the father is the father of the child, right? So 50% of the father will also have there's no more of this. You didn't get prescribed. Like she actually suggested. Right? She actually suggested that. We didn't prescribe you anything. Of course, I am male, right? The female, the woman will be prescribed these abortifacients, right? So the damages for the father and for the mother, and use civil case discoveries, email, internal documents to strengthen the criminal case. Right? There must be this discovery. I cannot wait for this is probably, what I'm most interested in is what is going to be, what kind of information will be uncovered here in the discovery phase of the civil trial. So a public exposure, public exposure and whistleblower testimony. So key argument, a public outcry and testimonies from medical professionals willing to expose the truth can create pressure on regulatory bodies and law enforcement to take action. Right, so these doctors, these real doctors, who are willing to expose the truth, and yes, I mean they're going to be scared for their jobs. Like if you do the right thing, you cannot be a doctor in this modern wacky, pharmaceutical day and age here. The evidence would be former patients who regret their decisions due to lack of informed consent, and whistleblower testimony from clinic staff, pharmaceutical reps, or medical board members. Data showing declining birth rates and negative long-term effect on women's health. And the strategy would be to use media coverage, social media campaigns, and legal advocacy groups to increase public scrutiny and force prosecutors to act. Right? The prosecutors, sometimes they're very, very stubborn, but a prosecutor should, have justice at the forefront of his moral compass there. And this is certainly a case that is so extremely important. And acquittal, acquittal would be so incredibly devastating. So that's why these prosecutors should be given the most resources that is it's the most resources to be able to build a case that will put murderers like Dr. Dow and the likes of Dr. Dow in the prison for the rest of for a period of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for at least 25 years, right? Not concurrently, consecutive sentences for each baby that died, right? See, you cannot do a consecutive sentence that would be unduly long or harsh. Concurrent sentences are used and I know what you're thinking. Right? This is extreme idiots, but at this point, a 25-year parole ineligibility period would certainly be adequate, given the rest of everything that we have to talk about in sentencing guidelines. Now, preemptively countering a victimhood narrative, right? So the key argument here will be that Dr. Dow will attempt to paint herself as a victim of political or ideological attack, or an attack on women's rights and all this stuff. So the prosecution must remain focused on facts, legal violations, and not personal beliefs. So frame the case as a medical ethics and fraud. We do have to go, but basically the idea is that the resources are extremely extremely important. We must give the prosecutors the most possible resources. We got to go, but I think you know what I'm saying here. The prosecutorial strategies here against Dr. Michel Dow, an acquittal would be so very, very devastating on justice. It would just be an affront to justice. Thank you very much for tuning in.